when you actually read this, you know, I think the Americans have severely lost the plot, because when you actually read this, right, in the actual writing, not any other translation of it, it says Congress shall make no law. That means no laws, no rules, no regulations respecting an establishment of religion, okay, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It says free exercise thereof. Free exercise is completely free. Free exercise means that there aren't any rules or regulations, just like they say that they make no law. If you've got no law, if it's not making any law, and there's a free exercise of something, then you haven't got any restriction or rules for it, of religion. But after religion, it says or. So this is also or. So if you've got red or blue, it applies to red and blue. The religion or, so it's gone into something else now. All of those things apply to the religion, or they apply to, and here we go with the rest of it, or prohibiting. Well, a prohibition is a restriction. A prohibition is a restriction, just like a law is a restriction, and a free exercise, the opposite of free exercise, is a restriction. So they're saying it 3 times in 3 different words. If you're making no law on something, and if you've got a free exercise of something, and if there's no prohibition on something, I mean, I've heard of double standards, but triple standards, I mean, who would even be able to put a rule on? You've heard double jeopardy of law, but this is triple. I mean, they've said it 3 times in 3 different terms to make it more clearer than crystal. I mean, how many different definitions of the exact same thing do you need to make it clear? You know what I mean? Or abridging. Well, abridging is to stop you from having a way to do something, a route or method to do something, which is the same as prohibiting or making a law or free exercise. Because, you know, if there's no bridge there, you can't exercise something. You can't exercise yourself across the ravine if there's no bridge, if you bridge it. Or, so we're still on this or thing. So, because we're still on or, this and this, or this and this, or this and this, it's still riding on from the first line, which is to make no law respecting the establishment of religion. So it's still making no laws and prohibiting or abridging all of these things, or because it's saying blue or red or thing. It's not saying it's basically like saying and, you know. You might as well say red and blue and yellow and green. You can have green or blue or whatever, but if you can't have one or the other, you can't have or and you can't have and, right? So freedom of speech cannot be. So all of these are either or for all of them. It's all in, basically. To put it bluntly, it's all in. So you've got freedom of speech cannot be prohibited, abridged, or a law made against it. So that's like more than double standards. That's like triple standards. Or of the press. That is to put into print, to write, to put into writing. Or, again, another or. So we're on a roll now with it. We're on a roll under all of the above. All of the above. Because you can have this or this or this or this, or this and this or this. If you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, or you can choose whether you want 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Surely that means that it's all in. It must mean that it's all in, for sure. It has to. Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition. So there's another and to petition the government for a redress of the grievances. Well, they used to have a grievances committee in Parliament. I think probably still around that time, committee of grievances. That's the point. And the thing is with this, so in England, the actual law in 1688 and 1689 that you can't be prosecuted or be imprisoned for the petitioning, but you could be liable to civil action from any other persons, but you're not to be regarded a criminal. The thing is, they can't make a law to stop you doing this, but in this First Amendment, it's not making it clear that you've got any certain particular immunities or so forth from being criminally liable. But the thing is, you can be liable to civil actions from other persons if you did break the peace or damage something or whatever. But so there's no actual exact indication in here that you've got immunity from criminal liability and that you can only be civilly liable, but they can't make a law to stop you doing it, that's for sure. And in England, it wasn't just about stopping you from doing it, because you could do it at the hundreds courts level. You had immunity at the hundreds courts level, but the king was still prosecuting people for doing it. You know, you could see it still existed. But then they put a stop to that, so that there's no way you could stop you at all from doing it. But is also kind of putting, if they put conditions on how you can do it and where you can do it, it's really restricting your ability to do it and your effectiveness. This is meant to be, when the states become United States, surely there are certain laws. There's a gold standard of laws that apply over the whole of America. Federal law, particular laws for doing particular activities that are the gold standard across the states, because that is what makes the United States of America the United States. On these particular issues and laws, there can't be a law. So I really don't think that you can have all these different state laws for petitioning. And another thing that I wanted to say is this, and this is important to the ballot access for both Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Jill Stein. When you understand the Tumultuous Petitioning Act and the fact that when you entered petitions into the legal system, you did it through like local court or jury or whatever, right? And if it was over 20 people, you had to get consent from the Court of Civil Requests. That's a legal case. With a jury and so forth. Now, the thing is, this is what you need to realise, right? You've got criminal cases, you've got civil cases, which also now includes like your religious, marriage and divorce and so forth. But then you've also got these petitions, which is to a local council authority like Stop Cop City or whatever, or any grievance or issue, but it's meant to be Court of Civil Request because it's still a court. The thing is with the local council, with the mayor, and it still has a cabinet, and then your councillors vote like the full-time jurats used to decide on matters, right? It's still a court, so you can still put evidence. You've still got proceedings. Now, the thing with petitioning, most of the proceedings are outside because you've got to go and collect signatures, collect evidence, it's the equivalent of the policing work out and about for a case, but instead of getting evidence of crime, you're getting evidence of public concern and promoting and raising the issue to the public. In a civil case, you have to do things out of court, but people don't understand that. If you've got a civil action against someone, you have to get receipts, you have to take photographs. That's why there's law for like certain without lawful consent for things like trespassing or that type of area of law in trespass. You know, if you've got a legal claim, you might need to access land to take photographs, you know, and so forth. You can get warrants and subpoenas and stuff like that in civil cases if they... But the standard law allows for certain activity without a warrant. Like the police have just been smashing... They just smashed in that Rachel Eleanor Love's front door, who's from the Love Party. Apparently they could, you know... They've been given certain powers without warrants when they can, you know, it's on suspicion or this or that. The thing is that the public can do certain policing work without being a police officer and pursue criminals, and there are certain laws to stop people obstructing you and getting in the way. But the thing with the police is they're confident, they've got backup radios to get more people, and they relentlessly go after you with more people. And they've got the authority behind them, confidence, training, equipment. In a civil case, if you actually are going to court and you need evidence and investigations, there are certain powers you can exercise if you understand the law and know it, and have got the confidence to pursue it, you know. But what finances and money have you got? Are you just by yourself, you know? Sometimes if the police haven't got a warrant and they're only using their own powers and they don't present or show evidence on suspicion, well, you effectively you can challenge them if there's, you know, you can challenge them, you know. Well, you know, we've got reason to believe this. Well, I've got reason to believe that that's not true. You know, the thing is, prove it in court. Well, how do you get them to court? You haven't got the power or force to stand up to them or challenge them. This is what castles are all about. You know, that Rachel Eleanor Love were talking about castles, you know. If you had a castle with a drawbridge and a shield and armour, you can defend yourself. And this was the whole thing through the Middle Ages, you know, knights and chivalry and coats of arms and castles and different affiliations. But what they don't tell us about the Middle Ages when you're at school and a little kid and talking about castles and horses and kings and so forth, chivalry, you don't realise that whole part of the section of history was during the continued expansion from the conquest, William the Conqueror, and people had castles and so forth because they weren't all necessarily under the same affiliation. It wasn't just, you know, protecting themselves from brigands or people in the woods, wild people, just, you know, it wasn't kind of like civilized versus uncivilized. It was also houses under different authorities, because you had Scotland, you had Ireland, you had Wales, you had Lancaster, you know, house of this, house of that. And while they were building the castles and putting the castles up, it wasn't actually done after everywhere had been conquest. It was actually fighting the battles and defending against them while they were under certain jurisdictions of certain authorities and kings, you know, and so forth. That was part of what that period was, not just wealthy people defending themselves in castles from thieves or so forth. Some of it was affiliations, like, you know, your chessboard, you've got one side and the other side, you know. But anyway, going back to the courts, the thing with the current ballot access in America is this, right? Firstly, the original Constitution says that there are going to be some different laws and rules for this president thing, but only because by design there was a slightly different law. It was designed so the Constitution designed it so there was different requirements in each state. Because one state is like, one person's got to be from Louisiana and not Louisiana or whatever, or sorry, you know, Arizona or not Arizona. And then the next state, the law is one person's got to be from California, not California. And then the next state is one person's got to be from Florida, but not from Florida. So immediately the federal law itself makes different laws for each state by design. That doesn't mean to say that, one state doesn't have to check them properly or one state does, because you want a thorough, proper validation process everywhere, or there's no point doing it. But that's a no-brainer. Obviously, when it says you've got to write down one person's name home and one person's name away, obviously it's a no-brainer that you've got to check to make sure that name is eligible, you can read it, and he is definitely a person from within the state and the other is a person from without the state, right? If you've got the capacity to check all that. Now, the thing is, and we definitely have now, the thing is that if you didn't check that, it won't be a very good system anyway. So, I mean, you can either read it or you can't read it, and it either is from the state or it isn't from the state. If it isn't, you haven't complied with that federal law, right? Now, as for time limits and so forth, it doesn't say there are any time limits or restrictions. Like in one state, you've only got 3 weeks, or in another state, you've got 2 months or whatever. How can you have that when it's the same competition? When it's the same contest for President of the United States, how can you have different rules for the same competition in different states when it's the same competition? It would be ludicrous. Because it can't be the same competition, can it? Surely, and that's, to be honest, that's why I think the First Amendment in. Remember, the style and form of that president election is by petition, because it's an open petition. You can write down whoever's name you want. It's a free open petition. And between your 2 signatures, it covers the entire states. It's just sections it off. It sections your home state off into one signature, and then it sections off the other name signature for the rest of the states. So it divides the entire states between 2 signatures, right? It's like Arizona, a certain zone, right? It lets you vote for 2 people, and it zones one of them off into your area, but still, these names you write cover the entire United States, right? And it's a competition for first place and second place for president and vice president, and they won't be from the same party or group. It will be a good mix, which means one of them's got to hold the other one to account, and clearly it stops certain monopolies taking over, or certain persons or rulers or kings, because you never really know for sure who they're going to be. And the vice president then might not be someone who agrees with the president all the time. So surely that's healthy. It's a check, isn't it? It's a check. It's an independent check, isn't it, on what they're doing. It's an independent check on what they're doing, which is supposedly why the entire American federal government was supposed to be impartial, and a lot of the main federal government officers couldn't vote and weren't allowed to support for or against the party because it's impartial, right? So now also, I think in here when it says, for petitioning, Congress shall make no laws respecting religions and freedom of speech and the right to petition, either abridging it, prohibiting, or making a law, is that this is trying to stop them from making ridiculous, inconsistent laws from state to state, particularly if it's for the president part, because surely if it's the same competition, it has to be the same rules, or else it can't be the same competition, can it? Or else that'd be ridiculous. It would be like playing tiddlywinks and saying that, reds can only, move 1 square every round, and blue can move 3 squares, and green can move 5, and yellow can only move none. That means yellow couldn't move at all. So if yellow's not having its rights abridged, and you're making a law so yellow can't even move at all, it's almost like RF Kennedy Jr. and Jill Stein have been put on yellow and they can't do anything. It would be insane, right? Now, And there's one more thing that I'd like to say about this different states claiming they've got all these different petitioning rules and regulations, at least for the president contest. Maybe possibly like in their own different, different states have different laws when they're voting their mayors in. But this is meant to be the gold standard for petitioning, the national standard for petitioning generally in matters of church, state and law. Because it's religion, right? Religion and state and the law itself. Congress shall make no law for this. So in matters of church, state and law, surely they can't, abridge with different rules or prohibiting certain actions. Because if you think of it, if you're prohibiting, right, in one state you've got 3 weeks to collect them, in another state you've got 2 days. Well, what you're doing there is you're prohibiting the free exercise of time to do it. Like giving someone a yellow tiddlywink that can't even move, around or something on their turn. So it's almost ridiculous. And another way I can exemplify this a bit more clearer is this. So in a criminal case, you have rules. You've got procedure rules. Okay, we've got rules. You've got rules. But what even is a criminal case? You can also, it's not a, it's not complete and total scaffolding. It's, you can maneuver within it. You can maneuver within it in order to do what you need to do. So like in a criminal case, you give directions, you can make requests, you can do stuff, you can maneuver, you can say, to the prosecutor, we want to, there's lots of different things you can do in legal work. You can do, I'm just trying to think of the word, undertakings. So you can get the opposite party to agree to an undertaking, or get the judge to ask them to do an undertaking, like, we want you to go fetch this evidence or that, or we'd like you to find out about this or that, find out about, some rules on this, or some information on the environment, or we want you to undertaking to bring us the specifications of a certain chemical or something. If it's from a lab or something, we'd like to undertaking to go and bring some, you got these fingerprints, but how do we know that they're not forged or whatever, this ink or that. So we're pretty sure undertaking to get more evidence to prove that this was the correct ink, or different types of ink, just whatever you want. And the judge can approve it, or they can agree to these things, undertakings, go do certain things, just like when you get a warrant, it's for you, right? Okay, we need to get access to this property to get this, or send them a letter at least to give it over, right? Because we need it for the case to prove this or to prove that, or we can't prove the case, right? Now, in that Donald Trump recent case, his solicitor, that girl, or woman, I'll call her woman, I mean, the judge was really strict. So the judge was disallowing this and disallowing that. But there's some judges, if they're a impartial, unbiased, fair judge, reasonable, and you are explaining to them how you want to prove your case to them with evidence, and telling them what you need in order to do it and make a strong case to them and the jury, right? You get adjournments, you can have mention hearings, there's all these type of things. This is the legal process. Now that's criminal. Same goes for civil, slightly different rules. True, there are rules, but you've got this manoeuvrability. You've got this scope for things you can do, possible motions, actions, requests. It's not, just this, if you know how to apply for them and request them, you can maneuver, although it takes more hearings and more sessions and it costs more money, usually, depending, I suppose, you get the duty solicitor, but they usually only represent you on one hearing, the first appearance, unless you get legal aid. Now, the thing is, this is the issue, what I've got with all these different ridiculous laws and rules in different states for the petitioning, like, oh, you know, it's got to be done in 2 weeks and you've got to collect this number of signatures and they've got to be checked this way or that way. Fair enough. You've got to have procedure rules, right? No one's saying that you don't have to have some kind of procedure rules. But the thing is, the procedure rules really for the original constitution were quite simple and straightforward. I mean, it's a no-brainer that if you can't read the name that's written down, obviously it's not submissible, right? But this is the thing. There are these rules in normal cases, civil cases and criminal cases, but the Crown Prosecution Service don't always... The Crown Prosecution Service doesn't always follow the procedure rules exactly. Sometimes they don't provide the evidence within so many days. Sometimes, like with a case at the moment, I think that the lawyer or solicitor hadn't even been laid or given evidence at the hearing, at the first hearing. They hadn't obtained it. And then they said to the judge that they're going to provide it before a certain date. And I don't think they've provided it now, even still. You know, there are some procedure rules that they don't follow, and this is the thing, if you know the procedure rules and if they know they've got to provide it, it's a little bit like with the driving offences. The new modern rules for particular speeding offences is that you've got to receive the letter within 14 days, and if you prove that you didn't receive the letter within 14 days, then apparently they can't prosecute you. Although, just because you don't receive it within 14 days and you've got evidence for that, just because you write to the police doesn't mean to say that they'll drop it. You might have to still get a lawyer to prove it to the court that you didn't receive it within 14 days. It doesn't mean that just because they didn't comply with the rules, they're going to stop. The police might pursue you still, right? You have to prove that they didn't comply with the rules and call them on it. You know, sometimes it can be, if you've got a really good lawyer, you can prosecute them for abusive process or professional negligence and actually sue them or so forth, or give them a penalty. But sometimes the breaches invalidate the prosecution and they can't prosecute you anymore. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it can carry on. So you can break the rules and then the judge can end up saying that, you know, it can continue, but he just penalises the prosecution or tells them they've got to correct it or whatever. Now, this is the problem I've got with these petitions, because petitions, remember, are court of civil requests. You're making a request to the local authority, whether it's the local council that's got a mayor, or to the Parliament or White House, federal government, right? It's still proceedings. You get, you know, federal question cases. You can ask questions about it, you know, to what does this need to conform with, or what shall I do for that? That's what Kennedy should have done when he was putting his address down, gone to the federal question and asked what address he should put down in each state, and then how could they say that he'd done it wrong when a judge had told him what to do? But this is the thing, how they're playing it now in America, or the way they're talking about it or presenting it as if, oh, you didn't do this correct or you didn't do that correct, so it's invalid, you're out. But remember, just for example, if it's a criminal case or a civil case, you turn up at the date you're told and you had so much time, but you can ask for more time. You can say to the judge, we didn't get all the evidence in time, some of it for this reason, because the witness is on holiday, or the lab is taking too long to get the results from the tests, or whatever legitimate reason. And you say to the judge, can we adjourn it? And he says yes. Now, this is the thing. All these Stop Cop City petition, like in Atlanta, in Georgia, when they're going, oh, they've got very strict petitioning rules in Atlanta and Georgia. Oh, have they now? What strict rules, like the criminal procedure rules in crime? Very strict rules, it's so strict that, you can't adjourn, so strict that you can't ask for more time, so strict that, you can't get the other party to an undertaking, ask them to recollect certain signatures or get them checked, or telephone them. Oh, can I go on the special speed awareness course? Your Honour, oh, well, we can't decide that, only the police chief can, and we'll have to ask him for permission, you know. I mean, it's almost kind of like, you know, in Atlanta, that, oh, I have to ask the mayor. Oh, the mayor who's opposed to the petition, who doesn't really want you to get it through and block Stop Cop City, ask him for petition if you can have a little bit more of an adjournment and extra time to collect the petition signatures, because you know, all the buses were broken down or stopped, or it's just ridiculous time limit anyway, or, you know, all the shops were closed so you couldn't buy pens or whatever. Reasonable explanation. It's a court. It is the court of the council with the councillors. And if you're opposing this is the thing, right? In a criminal case, it's usually the state versus the citizen, right? Because it's the king's law or the federal law, right? State law, whatever, right? So the prosecutors are working for the people, for the government, and you've been a naughty citizen, but you all have to play by the rules, and you've got a right to defend yourself. And they were meant to weigh up impartially. They weren't actually just after you from the start. You just didn't follow rules, right? And then they said to prosecute you, but you've got a right to defence to prove your innocence and use the full system. The thing is, with petitions, right, these mayors in Atlanta and these councils and government really don't want them to stop Cop City because they put the application through and they want to get Cop City. But really remember, in the American Constitution and states, the officers, the elected persons who work in state, aren't meant to be on one side or the other side. They're purely meant to be by the people, for the people. So that they're not really meant to want or not want Cop City. So when you go into the court and say, right, there is no, in a civil case, you've got party A and party B. So, you know, you've got citizens for and citizens against. Well, the citizens for and the citizens against in a petition, you've only really got citizens for because you're trying to collect their signatures for to prove there's evidence that they don't want it. And then that's what the, you know, what it's not the councillors aren't voting on it, are they? The councillors the jury aren't voting on it because if they're wanting to put it on the ballot, the people are the jury, the people are voting. So it is actually the people who are deciding or not whether they have Cop City or not, or they're voting for it. You've only got to initially get evidence that enough citizens are interested for it to go to a vote by getting the petition signatures, right? But all these ridiculous rules that you've got to comply with, no one's saying that there aren't rules, but what is the petition? Well, you're making a request to the council. But the thing is, I know that they've got all these rules, but I can't see how the rules can be so fixed that you can never have any excuse, or you can't get an extension or ask for an extension. Why do you want an extension? Because a reason. It's almost kind of like the way they're talking about it in Atlanta is, oh no, you didn't by 2 weeks, so that's it, it's over. Can you imagine if the prosecutors, you know, didn't get evidence in this certain time and then it's over? Well, that's what they're doing with the driving offences, but sometimes they carry on prosecuting you anyway. You know, if you don't tell the court or whatever, surely there's got to be, when you go into the council and you're presenting these petitions, surely there's got to be, you know, some kind of, it's a court, it's got proceedings, and however they've written their rules, surely, you know, it's, you've got to have, if there's no room for human error, you know, it's, this is the thing with courts. The legal process is meant to have rules, but also provide for some amount of error correction, flexibility in error correction. So it's like, you know, you got the signatures, some of them aren't valid. Well, you say, well, you know, can we have an extension to recollect those ones, or or whatever, can we have an adjournment or this or that? I think that's what they're losing sight with the petition process. It actually is meant to be a court proceeding, but in local council. And the thing is, like on the HM Petitions website, it's the right of the subjects to petition the king, and all prosecutions and commitments for doing so are illegal, while being committed to prison, prosecution and being committed to prison. But it's meant to have flexible rules, it's meant to have flexible rules, procedure rules. There are some standing orders in Parliament. There are some, what's the other word? Standing resolutions in Parliament. But, in writing and on paper, they haven't put any legislation through for rules for petitioning Parliament. Because at the end of the day, if you've got to collect 100,000 signatures, I calculated that if you're doing that on paper, not online, 100,000 signatures on paper, it's 1 a minute. If you've only got 6 months, it's 1 a minute, and it's impossible. 1 a minute. I mean, even the postman's not always doing 1 letter a minute, and he's working, all day. And he's not even speaking to every person. He just goes up to the door, pushes it through. It's not like he waits for them to come to the door. And most of the time they're at work anyway, and he'd have to go. And if they were pushing it through the letterbox on one day and collecting them the next day, they'd still have to be in for him to collect it, unless they stuck it, left it in the letterbox or whatever, or put it on the doorstep or whatever. And if they send it in, that means they're going to have to pay money for stamps. Who's going to, in elections, you could send one communication for free in the post at Royal Mail when Royal Mail was owned by the public, 1 a minute is very, very difficult, particularly if you're doing it by yourself. It's got to be realistically possible. Online, yes, they can take off. It's still 1 a minute for 6 months online, which is a lot to get 100,000. So it's still difficult online, even sharing it around groups. I really don't know how they manage to do it a lot of the time, particularly, when it's not change.org, where people it's picking up signatures from all over the world, potentially, not strictly to the UK postcodes. So, when these different states are all making their own laws for their own local petitions and ballot access and so forth, it's not meant to be an absolute ultimatum. It didn't conform, you're disqualified, that's it. You got to know what the petition procedure is. It is a court to the local authority, like criminal or civil public authorities. And, if the prosecutor didn't get the evidence in time, they don't say, you're disqualified, that's it. In a murder case, they say, can we adjourn it, we need more time. If they start not doing what they say they're doing, they do get penalised, and then, they can actually be sued. You see, this is the thing. You can sue them for professional negligence, the CPS, for an abusive process, but they still might end up proving their case, but they might have abused the process during it and be up to a penalty. So why, aren't the Democrats suing RF Kennedy Jr., for putting the wrong thing down, penalising him, suing him? That's civil, isn't it? But doesn't mean to say that he doesn't have to collect the signatures again or resubmit his form with the right address on or whatever. In court, sometimes things aren't done properly or are incorrect, and it depends how the judge directs it. I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I know, I'm familiar with the criminal procedure rules and the civil procedure rules. I know for certain when you're claiming rights over the overriding objectives, there are no prescribed rules. There are no prescribed procedure for how you claim that right, how you enter it, how you write it down and submit it. It's merely recognised. The only prescribed procedure in the criminal procedure rules for is incompatibility with convention rights. In fact, I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Jill Stein should actually, that's what they should be doing. If you can do that in America, filing an incompatibility with convention right claim, an incompatibility with the First Amendment. But I've got a feeling that that's kind of what Kennedy was doing really in his federal question case with YouTube and so forth. But really, it's you v the government, innit? That's why it's federal question. There isn't really the respondent, there isn't really a respondent because you're challenging the federal process. I think the thing with the Democrats' challenge against RFK Jr. and Jill Stein was that it was against them. They tried to boot them off the ballot or kick them out. I'm not too sure if they were the respondents, but wouldn't you not have a respondent? Wouldn't it be the Democrats versus the federal government? And if the federal government passed Stein's application and approved it and passed Kennedy's, for example, then wouldn't the DMC be Democrats versus those people, those staff of the government who passed it? Which is, how is it against Kennedy? I haven't seen the legal case, but if it says versus Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they're saying he did something wrong. Well, why don't they penalise him? Why don't they fine him? Like they do with the prosecutors, or make them redo it or whatever. It doesn't always. This is the thing, with some of the Extinction Rebellion cases and so forth. This is why I'm not a prosecutor. I don't know the criminal procedure rules, but I know enough to know it's that there are situations where it can forfeit the entire case, and there are situations where there's just a penalty and they have to correct it or go and redo something. And we don't seem to be getting that with these ballot access. It just seems to be almost like bumper cars. Democrats just seem to be obsessed with bumping them off, as if it's not like the ballot itself. The competition, the case to federal government isn't a case where they can manoeuvre, do things, say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, Your Honour, we missed the time limit because, the bus broke down or whatever, someone stole the ballots, whatever, can we apply for more time? This is the thing with judges, but this is why the judges cannot be Democrats or Republicans, supposedly, because they're not impartial. You have to be impartial to one side or the other side, a fair system. That's why the rules exist. So also, there's meant to be spending limits in England for elections, spending limits and so forth. So it's fair. Well, they've still got to try and attempt to raise the money, but in America, it just seems to be, as much money you can throw at it and as many lawyers you can throw at it. I don't see how, if you've got a legitimate reason, a legitimate explanation, why you can't get an extension, adjournment, resubmit the documents so they are valid, and so forth and so forth. Because, okay, for Stop Cop City, all these different state laws all around America, they've got their own, that's the thing with America, each state have got different laws. But for petitioning, at least for petitioning the federal government for the election of the president, it says here, for all of the, for all in on this and for triple jeopardy, can't make any law, can't be abridged or, abridging, making laws against something, abridging it, or that's the word, prohibiting. So yeah, we've got these three terms: prohibiting, abridging, or making a law against it, which are quite synonymous, really. They're not. They don't mean the exact same thing precisely, but they mean generally the same thing. So to abridge something, you can't do it. It's the route is obstructed, right? Or there is no route. Abridging it is there is no route. So it's almost like if you got taking a right away. If you abridge something, you don't have the right to do it, or you don't have a way to do it. If you make something illegal, then that's the same thing. It's not lawful. It's not within the law to do it. And if you prohibit it, prohibition of alcohol means you're not allowed to have it or do it. So all three of them are very different terms. In fact, it's quite, Obama was going, hey, the first constitution was really, really innovative. That was wow, that's a long pause, Obama. You really built up the anticipation there, really, really, wait for it, really, really, really innovative. Wow, that sounded really intelligent. It's like he went really slow in between his words, but because each word was astonishing, astounding, magnificently delivered with impeccable, don't say make sure you don't say like dum, dum. No, innovative, astounding, astonishingly fantastical. Wow, you really made me wait for it then, and I was never let down each time. Boom, boom, boom. Just as long as you don't go pa rumpa pum pum, come they told me pa rumpa pum dum dum de dum dum astounding, fantastic, wonderful. Doesn't quite have the same effect as Obama with his boom, bam. That's Obama, bam. Unequivocal. Relentless. Astonishing. But virtuous. Now that's better. They really made me wait for it then, and I was never let down each time. Boom, boom, boom. Never feel so satisfied with the astounding words of Obama's delivery. Boom, boom, bam, bam, bam. This is it. But Obama, he's doing this presentation, Stanford and Harvard, and that we've talking about these. It was like really innovative. Really innovative, but it still had some flaws and glitches. What you mean? The fact that it wasn't. I could tell you once, I could tell you twice, I could tell you 3 times. Never mind double jeopardy. How many different? Really innovative because he said the same things unequivocally, specifically, inextricably, precisely, and in variation of different terms to make certain. Absolutely, there was no doubt, no shadow, no question of uncertainty, with full and absolute, complete and utter confidence in enough terminologies to make sure that these things and this and that and the other and this or that, whichever you want, if you want that one or you want that one. You don't do it. So why have they got all these? Why are they abridging RFK Jr.'s ballot access? Why are they prohibiting him from being on the ballot? Why are they Why are they using a law to prevent him being on the ballot? If Congress shall make no law to abridge the right to be on the ballot, and the fact is that you only got on the ballot because one of the citizens wrote your name down. there is no getting on it. You know, you're on it when someone writes your name down. One of the United States of America citizens writes your name down. You know, that's the thing. So, you know, the rules from state to state, you know, all states have got to check that the rules are being followed to the same standard, I would have thought. Because if it's valid, it's valid. If it's not, it's not. You know, but when you want to get into the details, or, you know, I can't quite read that name, or is it spelled properly, or whatever, fair enough. I mean, but it still means the same thing. Write the person's name down, right? Is it the person's name or not, right? Is it the name of the person, or isn't it? Either it is or it wasn't. It was either intended to be or meant to be. Now, this is the thing with mistakes. The insane thing, why would you want people to give their full details? So in order that you know it's definitely that person, but also you can check them and contact them. Why would you want to contact them? You know, well, I can't think of any other reason in an election or ballot why the hell you would want someone's address or name other than to contact them, or otherwise you can't contact them. You're abridging the ability to contact them. But if their address is there, and even if it's spelled wrong, can you... The thing is, what is the purpose of this address? Is it just so you know where they're from, or you know where they live, they're declaring where they're from? Or is it actually so you can make contact with them? They're contact able. You haven't abridged the ability to contact them. Surely it's not only just about where they're from. But the thing is, for the United States of America president now, you don't have to be from any specific state as long as you were born in America. It's not like if you're from, you know, these political parties, put it this way, the main Democrat and Republican candidate who they put forward, as long as they're from the United States, you know, Joe Biden doesn't have to be from any particular state as long as he's American. Donald Trump doesn't have to be from any particular state as long as he's American. So why does Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have to be for any particular state? You know, you surely, you know, you have to be electable by all Americans all around the country. I don't think that the reason and purpose for the address being there is to make sure that you qualify because you're from a certain state or not, like the original Constitution. But then, again, you know, people would have been able to write down Robert F. Kennedy Jr. For one of their names anyway, even if they were from a different state. Surely it's for contactability, so you're able to send mail to them, send communications backwards and forwards, not only the government, but maybe any other of the electors who's got a question or whatever, you know? So this is the thing. Maybe, you know, if it was a court case and the address was wrong, it doesn't always invalidate the case. It can, you know, it can be made to go resubmit it or recorrect it or whatever, depending on the thing. I would have thought that you can't, according to this, you can't abridge or prohibit or make a law to stop someone petitioning, you know? So that would be, you know, if it's the same contest, you know, is this the competition for the President of the United States? How can you have different rules for the same competition? It's a no-brainer. And in the first Constitution, the only rules as by state were that it's the Constitution that made the different rules in the different states, not the different states who made their own rules, you know. Surely the eligibility of the writing and letters and form of it has to be the same in every state, because how can it be the same competition? You can't. How can you have one competition that has different rules depending on who's entering it? Isn't that a discrimination? Surely that's got to be discrimination. like against these Americans are going on about like, racial discrimination, religious discrimination. Isn't that like discrimination against what state you're from? Isn't that like, surely this has got to be like, I'm from America, but because I'm from Alabama, the rules apply differently to me. But someone from Florida, their rules are different. That's got to be Kamala Harris, who's meant to be the champion of this kind of, racial equality, or from where you're from, what country you're from, what your ethnicity is, your origins, religion. Well, she doesn't seem to be having this equality in the presidential election, because it seems that all these different states have got completely different rules and regulations. How is that not discriminative in the run for president? Surely that is discriminative against everything that they believe in or claim they're believing in, choose your own gender or whatever, maybe, it's almost kind of like accent, it's almost like, oh, I'm from Virginia. If you've got a Virginia accent, then you've only got 3 weeks to, collect your signature ballots, or from, if you've got a Canadian border accent or something, like Vancouver or something, or California or whatever. Hey, man. Like, hey, surfers only get 6 weeks to collect the signatures, but, yeehaw, Billy Bronco Bugs from Texas, he gets 16 weeks to collect his ballot signatures. Oh, does he really? Good for him. No wonder Texas have got big hats. This is it. It's almost kind of like, discrimination between accents, if persons with certain American accents get different rules for entering. It's all, you might as well just say, Democrats, get 5 weeks to collect the signatures, but Republicans only get 1 day to collect them. Hey, that's a fair competition. This is it. It doesn't make sense to me. I think there are some fatal flaws in this whole how this is interpreted, because